Hi, this is Chris Ballew from the Presidents of the United States of America, also known as Caspar Babypants if you have small children, and you are listening to Fascination Street Podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This week's guest, as you could tell from that blurb that you just heard, is Chris Ballew from the Presidents of the United States of America and Caspar Babypants. If you don't know what or who Caspar Babypants is, you're about to find out. Obviously, the Presidents of the United States of America was a pretty big band back in the 90s. They had a few big hits, Peaches and Lump and Kitty. They released a few albums, had a little break, got together, did some really cool things, and here we are. In this episode, Chris and I talk about all of that kinds of things and what it was like to work with Beck, get advice from Madonna. We talk about all of those things, plus what moved Chris into the Caspar Babypants section of his life. It's a very interesting story about what drew him to Caspar Babypants and that style of music. We also talk about his newest creative explosion, which is yet another different kind of music. We talk about all those things. He tells great stories about Sir Mix-a-Lot and even a great story about Kurt Cobain's ghost. You heard me. Chris Ballew, a super nice guy. I can't believe how generous he was to sit down with me and chit-chat and let me play a couple of songs. That's right, kids. There's more music. You guys are going to love it. Check him out at babypantsmusic.com and chrisballew.org. And this is my conversation with the singer from the Presidents of the United States of America and Caspar Babypants, Chris Ballew.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Chris Ballew. How you doing today, man?
I'm great. I'm well fed and watered and ready to talk.
Well watered. Nice. That means you're plant-based. No, I'm just kidding. So, Chris, what I like to do is, start from the beginning, man. Where were you born and raised? Where'd you grow up?
Seattle, Washington. Well, more specifically, Yarrow Point, which is one of three sort of miniature peninsulas on the east side of the 520 bridge here in Seattle. So I grew up on the east side, and it's in a little town called Yarrow Point. Very little.
Just so y'all know, when he says very little, he's holding his fingers about 2.5 inches apart.
Just tiny like that.
It's a small place. My daughter recently, I guess it's coming up on a year now. She recently moved to Olympia, Washington.
Oh, yeah. I love Olympia. It's a great little town.
So does she. She visited it and then loved it so much she moved there. So it must be awesome.
Nice. My son lives in sort of the northern version of Olympia, which is Bellingham. Kind of smallish town vibe, but, not too far from big city if you need it.
Nice. And I think her and her boyfriend just got a house in Centralia. That's a word, right?
Yeah, Centralia. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a real word.
Yep, that's a real word. So is Puyallup.
I'm going to go with no, it is not, sir. And don't you ever call me that again.
Sorry. I had a colonoscopy. They found a couple Puyallups.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. So I know that from a very early age, you were interested in music.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it was Sgt Peppers Lonely Hearts Club Band, really. The very first was me banging on a piano with a hammer. I didn't know that you could use the keys. I was probably 1.5. I was doing a John Cage vibe at the age of 1.5, smacking the piano. And then I discovered Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which just at the age of 2.5, I got my mitts on that thing. My brother had bought it for my parents as a Christmas gift that year, 1967, and they filed it away, and I took it out and basically listened to that for the next 9 years.
Did you say at 2.5 you got your mitts on that record?
Yeah, I was born in 1965, so I was 2.5 when it came out in June of 67, and I was born in May, so that Christmas of 67, I was 2.5.
Let me be the first to tell you happy birthday for next May.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This is going to sound like a ridiculous question, but at 2.5 years old, you were able to put the needle on the record without scratching it?
Apparently, because the legend is I pulled that thing out. Maybe I didn't actually pull it out until the next spring or something. Maybe I was
Oh, yeah, sure. 3. Yeah.
Let's say 3. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that Christmas I was 2.5, but I don't think I actually zeroed in on the record till I was 3, probably. This is the first time I'm adjusting the story now.
Yeah. So you started off lying, and all because I asked how you did it at 2.5. You're like, no, I was 3 when I could put a needle on the record without scratching it. Before I could put a needle on a record without scratching it, I was 30. No, I was
going to say 16.
I was definitely in my teens for sure.
Yeah. That record just set off a movie in my head. I saw what they were singing and I felt what they were singing. The music and the lyrics all created this psychedelic experience for me. And we'll get to it eventually. But one of the reasons I made music for little kids, 0 to 5-year-olds specifically, is because they are having a psychedelic experience. And I wanted to be involved in that world. That's when music was really first turned on in my brain. So yeah, that album just turned me on. And I've been on ever since.
Now, your parents, are they musically inclined? Do they play instruments? Were they in bands growing up, that kind of thing?
None of that stuff. But my mom was a piano player, as a hobby, and loved classical music and took me to the symphony a lot when I was a little kid and sort of turned me on to all that stuff. And then my dad was into hillbilly music and country music.
What's hillbilly music?
Well, like Bill Monroe, mandolin, fiddle, no drums.
Okay.
High Lonesome, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Am I hitting any buttons yet?
Yeah, mountain music.
Yeah, mountain music. We called it hillbilly. His definition of country was if it has drums, it's not country. So he was not down with young country.
He needs a wash tub or a box to thump on or something?
I guess so, yeah. That's just what he used to say. If it's got drums, I don't listen to it. Burp.
So when your mom used to take you to symphonies and things, did she pat you down and search you for hammers?
Like I was going to get up and bang on the piano.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably should have. She didn't know, but I had a trench coat just full of hammers.
Can you imagine that? Just like a small child with just a whole shitload of hammers.
Just taking them out and throwing them. Choo, choo, choo.
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
So what did you want to be when you grew up? Obviously, you're going to say something in music, right?
Yeah, I wanted to be a musician.
Did you go to school, college, university, or anything like that?
I did. I went to State University of New York at Purchase to be an artist. Actually, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why did you go all the way across the country?
So I could understand the East Coast and the Northeast and New York and just kind of expand my horizons, just kind of taste a different coast.
So is that like fine art? Like you draw and you paint and you do stuff like that?
Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't have a voice as an art. I did visual art all the time. When I was a kid, I drew and painted and did stupid, little cartoons in my journal or whatever. We had to have a journal for school. So it was like every week you had to turn in a certain number of pages of writing or drawing or something. So I was doing that. I went to art school mostly because I wanted to avoid going to music school. I didn't want to learn all the choral relationships and all the theory. And I hated music theory. Even when I was a teenager, my piano teacher tried to get me into theory. And it just it was like biting foil. I hated it.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds painful.
I just had this feeling like what I'm going to end up doing with music is being more intuitive and more hunting for my own particular chemistry through failure. And somehow that felt clear even at a young age. So yeah, I went to art school to avoid music school. Didn't really have anything to say with visual arts. So I, of course, formed bands in college and played around. I actually played at CBGB's and Hilly Crystal liked my band.
No shit.
Yeah, he told me one day, he's like, good job. You guys are good. I'm going to have you back.
What was the name of that band?
Asleep Standing. We were in college, it had to be an idea.
Sure. What style of music was that?
It was a lot of the same as the Presidents, really. Tiki God was one of our songs, which turned out to be a President's song later. There were a handful there. It was kind of, like Sgt Peppers, kind of a kaleidoscope of styles. There we had our country song and a song that kind of sounded like the Strokes, even though the Strokes weren't a thing then.
Right.
NRBQ. Do you know NRBQ?
No, I don't.
Their vibe was kind of what that Asleep Standing vibe was. Half of the set, I played a clavinet. and half the set I played guitar. So we mixed it up. It was fun. And we lived together in an apartment on campus like the monkeys and had a great time.
That sounds like a fucking blast, man.
It was awesome. We played CB's twice. And then we moved to Brooklyn to kind of think, well, let's keep, but the band didn't really have staying power. Everybody kind of went their separate ways eventually. So.
Do you still talk to those guys?
No. I run into the drummer every once in a while.
With your car?
Yeah. Well, no, with a little go-kart, just gently hitting his ankles until
That's cool. Until he pays attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Until he's like, hey, stop that.
When you put Tiki God on a President's album, did you have to get their permission or were you the writer of the whole thing anyway?
I was the writer of the whole thing anyway. Yeah. Okay. I just wrote that song. A lot of my songs have, there were a few like on the President's album that existed in other forms with other bands. And that first President's record was kind of culling a lifetime of songwriting for the best nuggets.
Isn't that what all first records are?
Pretty much. Although the songs Lump and Peaches and Kitty were brand new.
That's fucking hilarious.
And they were the singles. Some of the album tracks were, road tested with other combos until they got Dave and Jason's hands on them. And Dave and Jason gave them the right flavor to make them shoot off like a rocket.
Tell me about Bull Weevil.
Oh, Bull Weevil. It started out as a weird little, I think I was stoned and I made.
Oh, it ended up as a weird little.
It started out as me. It was just like, I was playing with the pitch control on a 4-track and I made it sound really like a Bull Weevil. It was just a fragment that had nonsense lyrics, and I just sort of developed it and made it into something real, just because I was like, oh, we need another song. Oh, here's a funky one. We didn't have a funky one in the set, so it became the funk.
I love that song.
Yeah, and that actually was about a member of Asleep Standing who was a real, not agoraphobic necessarily, but real into being at home, playing video games, smoking, eating tuna out of a can, putting out the cigarettes in the tuna cans. And I went over to visit him. This was long after the band had done its thing, and he moved back to Seattle. He and I knew each other from Seattle. We went to school in New York together, and we'd moved back to Seattle, and I went to visit him, and he was living in this kind of squalor situation, and that's when I got the idea for the song. The message to the Bull Weevil: get right out of your home,
That's hilarious. I think nowadays, like you said, not necessarily agoraphobic, but I think nowadays we would call him an indoor kid.
Yeah, indoor kid, right.
So some of your influences are the Beatles and for some reason, Blue Oyster Cult, right?
Yes.
Now I say for some reason, because even though I'm going to guess that they are the influence of a lot of bands, nobody ever mentions them, but I heard you mention them. What about them inspired you? I mean, I was listening to those albums when I was a kid too, because that was my mom's favorite band. And I don't know if you're friends with, but I know you have a relationship with one of the dudes from that band.
Yeah, Albert Borchardt.
Albert. Now, his brother, Joe, founding bass player of that band, he was on my show before. He's a super cool dude.
Nice.
So what about Blue Oyster Cult inspired you?
I don't know. I think the Beatles never really delved into arena rock, that stance of expansive God of Thunder kind of vibe. And it was sort of maybe missing in my paint box of options. Later, the Presidents, we did a song called Mach 5, which was kind of me trying to make a Kiss song. But Blue Oyster Cult blew me away because they were super weird and psychedelic. I mean, those first couple of records, I'm on the Lamb, but I ain't no sheep. She's as beautiful as a foot. Last Days of May. I mean, there's just so many weird, almost like Sgt. Peppers, their albums. They're like the Sgt. Peppers of arena rock or something. They just scratched that itch. And I loved how weird they were. And later when I met Albert, he came to see the Presidents in New York. He's from Canada, from Toronto. And we just had a crazy bonding session. And he ended up sending me a bunch of his solo stuff with this band called the Brain Surgeons. We stayed in touch. Back then it was pen pals because it was the 90s.
Sure.
He wrote quite a few of those weird songs, or co-wrote. And so it was fun to, fanboy out on one of my childhood heroes.
Love it. Pick the brain of the guy who wrote some of the weird shit.
Yeah. Well, and he was looking at me like, you're writing weird shit. And I said, no, you're writing weird shit. And we had a weird shit off.
That sounds weird.
It does. Yeah.
So at some point, we're going to jump around a little bit.
That's fine. That's how the mind works.
Word. So at some point, you met Beck and started touring with him. How did that come about?
Well, when I was in Boston, I played on the street quite a bit, and I became friendly with this girl named Mary Lou Lord.
I'm going to interrupt you already.
What?
So how did you get to Boston? So after you graduated in New York, you were like, hey, fuck it, I'm going to Boston?
Well, the last semester we were at college, this visiting artist came. His name was Chris Janney, and he did large scale installations in public spaces of these like light beams that when broken would trigger sounds on a synthesizer. And
okay,
he turned like architectural spaces into instruments, basically. And he said at the end of the school year, we were seniors and graduating, he's like, if anybody wants to come to Boston and work for me, you've got a job. And I had no real idea what I was going to do. So we went, me and the drummer for the band I had in college. And then the guitar player, Bo Weevil, followed. And so the three of us were a band called Egg in Boston. So that's how I got to Boston.
Okay.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
So I ran into previous guest of this show, Chris Gronkowski, the other day, and it went a little something like this.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Chris. Hey, you know what sucks? When I get done with my workout at the gym, my protein shake's not cold anymore, man. It's room temperature.
Weird. I haven't run into you at the gym lately.
Busted. Okay, truth be told, I don't work out, but I do get thirsty after a long day of podcasting. I just can't seem to keep my cocktails cold.
You should use an ice shaker.
What's an ice shaker?
The ice shaker is a double-walled, vacuum-insulated stainless steel shaker bottle with a patented twist and agitator that breaks up the protein powders.
So you're saying I should switch to an ice shaker, take out the agitator so I can fit more ice in the cup and it'll stay cold longer?
Steve, you don't need more ice. The ice shaker is third-party tested and verified to keep your drink cold for 30-plus hours.
Chris, you're a genius. I'll still remove the patented screw and agitator and just add more booze.
I guess technically you could, but if you actually use the ice shaker as a protein drink cup, the agitator breaks up the powder and doesn't bounce around like you're shaking a paint can.
Why are we still talking? Let's party.
Gronk style!
That's right, Streetwalkers. Ice Shaker is the new sponsor at Fascination Street Podcast. Ice Shaker is made from kitchen-grade stainless steel so it doesn't smell all funky after you use it a couple of times like those cheap plastic ones. When I'm out and about doing interviews or partying Gronk style, I use the Fascination Street Podcast Edition 26-ounce Flex Ice Shaker cup, and it keeps my drink cold until the sun comes up. You saw Ice Shaker on Shark Tank. All 5 sharks made an offer with Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez closing the deal. Now you can get a deal too. Order your own 26-ounce Flex Cup right now at iceshaker.com and use the promo code FSP for $5 off your first order. Once again, that's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Pod, for $5 off your first order. That's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP.
Let's get back into it.
Now, you were talking about Miss Lord.
Oh, yeah. So I'm playing on the street because I was discovering that it was a really good way to tell if a song was good or not, or was hooky or not. It was to play it for people who didn't really want to hear it.
So like busking on the corner?
Yep. Okay. I had a little battery powered amp. My friend Phil was there, the drummer from the college band who went with me to Boston. Initially, he had a drum kit that was like a suitcase for a kick drum. And then all the drums went in the suitcase when it was time to hightail it because we were being shooed away by the cops. So, yeah, that was super fun. And as I was immersed in that scene of playing on the street, I met Mary Lou Lord, who was also busking. You know, she was doing it really for a job. I was doing it here and there to kind of hone my songwriting and make beer money and stuff like that. But she was serious about it to the point where she had like carpal tunnel and, you know, had to take breaks. And sometimes during her breaks, I would take over her spot and grab her guitar. She'd go use the restroom because a spot in Harvard Square in Boston is real hard to get. And once you get it, you don't want to leave. So.
And also, you can't just leave your shit there and go to the bathroom. Like, your stuff will be gone.
Yeah. We had a tradition of watching each other's spots. And then we formed a band called Strumpet, played a few gigs. I played that 2-string guitar right there. Okay. I'm pointing at listeners at home. And then flash forward to, I'm living in Seattle in 1993-ish. I think it was late 93. Mary Lou called me and said, hey, I share a publisher with this guy, Beck, and he's about to get signed, and he needs band members to go on tour with him because he's a solo guy, but he's going to put together a band, and you should be in the band. And I said, okay, Mary Lou, thanks. You know, I don't know what to say to that. That's cool. Bye. It's like as if your phone rang today and somebody said, hey, there's this guy named Oliver the Octopus and he needs musicians and he's going to be huge. And you'd be like, Oliver the Octopus. I don't know who that is.
Right. Like you don't fucking know Beck for shit. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just a word. It was just like, Beck, what's that? And then she called again and said that she was coming to Seattle with him because he was going to do some residency, like back and forth up and down the West Coast, kind of stirring up interest because his album was going to come out eventually on Geffen. So I could meet him. And I was like, oh, there's no harm in that. I'll go down and meet him. And I went down to the Crocodile and met him and watched him perform solo with an acoustic guitar. And it was like the Sgt. Peppers or Blue Oyster Cult thing. Movies went off in my head. I mean, I saw what he was singing about, the way he was collaging cultural references and words free of like necessarily telling a narrative arc at all, which was my songs were really like narrative and he was more abstract. And I really admired that. And I kind of wanted to be in that world. So we talked about all that after he played and, got along really well. And then the next night he played the OK Hotel and he was doing a thing where he was playing solo acoustic. But when he did Loser, he had a backing track on a DAT tape with digital audio tape back then. Was the most reliable, way to do playback live. But it broke during that OK Hotel show. And he was kind of floundering on stage a little bit, like not sure what to do, how to play the song. And I got up just uninvited, got up on stage, grabbed a little Casio keyboard and he had a guitar and we just started making some shit up. And eventually we ended up stuffing as many harmonicas in our mouths as we could. And we were wrestling on the ground. And it was just like this it was an absolute weird freak out, bizarre, crazy thing. And I think he dug it. I dug it. And a couple of days later, he called and said, would you like to be in my touring band? And it was the beginning of my life as a real professional musician. So it was a big deal.
How long were you on that tour? Were you on the whole first tour or?
First two tours. First one was a van tour and then we did a bus. And then the Presidents had already started at that point. And I had taken a hiatus from the Presidents to do those two tours. And our drummer, Jason, called one day and was like, you got to come home because we're selling copies of our demo tape like hotcakes over the bar here where I work. And plus, Beck it's a lot to ask somebody like him who's been solo his whole life and kind of in his own world to lead a band. And one way that he kind of was trying to make a mark for himself was to deconstruct the happy-go-lucky loser thing. He didn't want to put on a happy kind of showbiz show. He wanted to be Sonic Youth Jr., basically. And that was fun for a little bit, but that's not really not my jam. I'm an entertainer and I like to engage and interact and really like try to elevate the crowd. And he was kind of trying to cut their heads off. Just because he actually wasn't really into that Loser song. And he was kind of, I guess, a little bummed that it became the song that he was known for, which was a lesson for me. It was like, don't release any songs that you don't love because they might become hits and then you're stuck.
Sadly, that is more common the more people that I talk to. The hit it's not their favorite. And it's hard for me to determine sometimes whether it was never their favorite or if they're just fucking tired of it. Which, I mean, I guess I understand that as well. A long time ago, I took my little brothers to go see Pantera. And that was at the height of, what was it, Cowboys from Hell album or whatever it was. That song, Cemetery Gates, that's them, right?
I don't know. I don't know Pantera at all.
I think that was the one. Anyway, they started to play that song. Like, we're talking like a full arena. There's, 27,000 people in there.
Uh-huh.
And they started to play that song. I think it was that song. And, I mean, the crowd went bananas, right? And then about a quarter of the way into it, they stopped and the singer goes, I fucking hate that song. And then they didn't finish it. They just moved on to another song.
Oh,
which blew me away.
That's rude, man.
Probably half the people in that audience were there to see that song. It just blew me away. So I'm not saying that, that's even on par with Beck at all. Not another song. I'm just saying that feels like sort of almost a through line of acts that get really big, especially if it's really big based on, one or two really, really big hits or singles or whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously it stuck with me and it's been, 23 years or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think too, for him and that song, it was the narrative around the song. The whole like, you are the slacker generation's guru or whatever. And he was way deeper. He had way more ideas than just that headline. So I think that also kind of screwed around with his ability to enjoy that song.
That makes sense.
But, I took it to heart. And when we made our debut record, I loved every single song. And the songs that became hits I love Lump and Peaches and Kitty and Mach 5 and Volcano and all the songs that, kind of elevated above the rest are like, I love them.
I think that's a really good lesson. If it's not your favorite, don't put it out.
Yeah, it was a hard, fast rule. By the time I got to the Presidents, after being in a bunch of bands and kind of, trying to wedge in a song that I wrote that not everybody wasn't quite into and convince people that it was good or whatever, I gave up on all that. And the Presidents had this philosophy, which was if all three of us look at the set list and don't love every single song, let's get rid of the ones even one of us doesn't love and just trust that something better will bubble up in its place. We just self-edited fearlessly and got it to the point where it all worked.
It seems pretty forward thinking, if you ask me. For a bunch of young knuckleheads, that seems really, really forward thinking. I mean, no, if I'm not calling you a knucklehead. I guess I was.
No. I mean, actually, we weren't even young knuckleheads. I mean, when the Presidents hit, I was 30.
Oh my gosh, you're a grizzled veteran by then.
Yeah. I mean, I spent my whole 20s flailing around doing dumb stuff. And then by the time I was 30, and it felt like this version of my live band setup with Jason and Dave really felt good. It was like, okay, I'm going to really dig in here and try to make this work. We just wanted to have fun. We didn't want it to feel like work. If you look down at the set list and you don't love the next song, that's work.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You play music, you don't work music.
Yeah, there was a movie called, doesn't matter what
Wizard of Oz.
Oh, there was also a movie called The Wizard of Oz. There was a movie, I don't remember what it was called, but in it, this guy is taking pictures. She's a photographer. And this girl says, why did you stop taking pictures if you love it so much? And he said, I started getting paid for it and it felt like work.
Yeah. It's tricky.
Yeah.
I'm kind of applied that. I make ambient music for meditation and sort of like as background music for other people's creative endeavors. And I just give that all away for free because I didn't want any structure or money or expectations attached to it. And all this, we'll get to it eventually, of course, but all this new music that I'm making now, I give it away on my website for free. It just feels really nice to not think about that, especially after having been in the grist mill of popularity and the top of the charts and all that stuff and feeling how unsafe and unstable and sort of dependent on so many other people's opinions happiness can be at that level. It feels really nice to just, in spots, remove all that.
Well, this question may be out of bounds and feel free to not answer it, but if you're giving all of your music away, how do you pay your bills?
Well, the two projects that I am not giving away are Presidents and Caspar Babypants, my music for 0 to 5-year-olds. Those are money makers that allow me to do all the other stuff for fun.
Gotcha. Well, this is going to be a very uncomfortable ask then. Can I play Beaches?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, you're okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I could play it on the instrument I wrote it on if you want.
That'd be fucking, you know what? Yeah, do that. Do it. Go ahead.
Let me plug in an amplifier here because it doesn't sound very good without it. This is a little $75 Kawaii guitar, a Japanese guitar that I got in Boston at a pawn shop on Mass Ave and played it on the debut record. Can't remember it. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. Okay, and that's all you get for free. Suck it, Pantera.
That's hilarious. Oh my God, that's funny.
It's good stuff. Yeah, I love this guitar. I'm actually still using this guitar on a daily basis. Actually, wait, here. There's Bo Weaver. I'm talking about I don't even remember how to sing that one. It's been a long time. We haven't done a show for 7 years, so I'm a little cold. But I did actually just play Peaches with Weird Al Yankovic the other night here in Seattle at the Moore Theater, and it was super fun.
The Moore Theater, is that the one where Pearl Jam, the dude was hanging off the chandelier and shit like that?
I think so. My landmark memory of the Moore is when there was a bill of bands. It was like Mudhoney and Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden, and they sold it out. And it was the first time I think all those guys looked at each other and went, well, I think we have something going on here. I think we are a thing, or we have some clout. You know, we can sell out the Moore.
kick ass.
Yeah.
Now, feel free to say no, but right after you stopped
No.
and said,
He said, hey.
can I put in that song, like the album version, or would you rather I didn't?
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine with me.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I just wanted to make sure that was cool with you.
Yeah, it's cool with me. I love that song.
Oh, me too.
Moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. I'm moving to the country, I'm gonna eat me a lot of peaches. I'm moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. I'm moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. Peaches come from a can, they were put there by a man in a factory downtown. And if I had my little way, I'd eat peaches every day. Sun-soaking bulges in the shade. Moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. Moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. I took a little nap with a roots all twist, squished a rotten peach in my fist, and dreamed about you, woman. I poke my finger down inside, make a little room for an ant to hide. Nature's candy in my hand, or can, or pie. Peaches for me, millions of peaches, peaches for free. Millions of peaches, peaches for me, millions of peaches, peaches for free. Look out!
Now, with Presidents of the United States of America, you use some weird instruments. Like just now, you use, what was that, like a two-string?
Two-string guitar.
So you use a two-string and a three-string. What the heck is that all about? Who even, like, what? My dad's been in bands my entire life. I've never heard of a two and three-string guitar. What gave you that idea?
Well, I ended up in Boston hanging out with and living with Mark Sandman from a band called Morphine. And he played a two-string slide bass. It was a full-scale bass with two strings that were raised up, and he played it with a slide. And I was in his studio one day, I think it was before we lived together. And I'm pointing fans at home at a red guitar behind me with a white pickguard. He had this guitar set up as a two-string, and I had never played a two-string. I was playing a four-string acoustic because I ran out of money and I couldn't put new strings on my guitar. So as I broke them, I went down to a 5 and then a 4, but here was a two-string, and it just felt like I was at home. It was a weird feeling. It was like, I can take all my kaleidoscopic influences, the same way Sgt Peppers is kaleidoscopic and Blue Oyster Cult to a certain extent, and Beck was definitely a kaleidoscopic influence. And I can run all these different sources through a two-string, and it sounds new. It sounds fresh. It sounds primitive in a way and kind of like personalized. So I could wear my influences on my sleeve, and it didn't look like plagiarism.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it felt really good. And I'm a minimalist. So two strings, great. Two strings to buy, two strings to tune. It was fantastic. So there's a little trick to, like when you look for a guitar, you got to look for a guitar with a floating bridge like all these have, so that you can move it around so you can get the intonation right. There's some tricks to setting up a 2 and 3 string that Mark and I kind of hammered out. We sat around one day with strings and calipers, he and I, and kind of figured out, all right, we need it to be in this tone for my voice, and how thick should the strings be, and what's the neck length. And
oh, wow.
It was kind of scientific.
Sounds very scientific.
So yeah, Mark really set me up. And now these days I'm back to playing, like I now have the Mark Sandman guitar set up as a 6 string. So I'm back playing all string combinations these days.
Oh my goodness. Well, look at you, bro. The growth.
I know.
So along those lines, I heard somewhere fairly recently that you want to make 2 and 3 string guitars for little kids.
Yes. Well, here's my real dream. Since there is a company called Loog, Loog, that I highly recommend. They make wonderful 3-string guitars for little kids. I have one in the house, actually. I love it. I play it all the time. But here's my pitch. What I really want to do is a 1-string guitar for infants that has a built-in amplifier and speaker that you can kick into overdrive, and you can just get like Mudhoney fuzz or Hendrix level fuzz, but with one pretty thick string. I don't want it to be boingy. So the idea with the 1 string is it's never out of tune, because there's never a string to tune it to.
Right.
So the parents have an exponentially less horrific experience of listening to a child bang away on an out of tune guitar for hours.
Unless they're hitting it with a hammer.
Yeah, that's true. And the kid gets to feel what it's like to rock out and, play immediately. It's an instrument anyone can play. And I've been trying to pitch Loog on doing it. They have since started making guitars with pickups and speakers, but they stick to their 3-string, and they make 6-string guitars too. But
interesting.
Anyway, my son is a guitar builder and a designer and player. And maybe there's a day when he and I go into business together and we make these things. I don't want to necessarily make a company that's selling it. I'd love to just like pitch it to and sponsor it with a company that's like Fender or Epiphone or somebody like that.
I'll call Bob Gibson and see what he says.
There you go. Exactly.
All right, rock on.
I want someone else to do all the hard work.
Well, there you go. Okay, so we're going to move on from the presidency of the United States of America just because you have so many other fascinating things to talk about, if that's okay.
Sure.
Oh, but first tell me about Cleveland Rocks.
We were on the Rosie O'Donnell show, who, by the way, is a really great drummer. She sat up on Jason's Kid and kicked ass.
Rosie
O'Donnell. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
She can thwap the skins or whatever the kids are calling it these days.
I'm sure it's not that, but go ahead.
It's not that. Thwap the skins. So we're backstage. For some reason, we were in a trailer outside. I don't know exactly why. Maybe she wasn't in a regular studio or something. And knock at the door, and it's Drew Carey. And he was a guest on the same episode. He came in with a supermodel on each arm, as I remember it. Hung out for a while, and we got along and shot the shit and laughed. And he got in touch with us a little while later and was like, I want to redo the theme song for the Drew Carey show. And I want it to be Cleveland Rocks by Ian Hunter. And I want you guys to record it. So we're like, yeah, sure. And so we went in and just did that one project in a couple of days. And at the very end of that song, when it says, Ohio, Ohio, that's Drew doing the Ohio.
Oh, good.
He phoned it in to the studio. So yeah, it was really nice. And we've played that song all over the place. It was in our set for a while. We did it not too long ago, maybe 2013 or 14. We did it at a home opener Cleveland Browns football game as a halftime act.
Oh my gosh. How cool is that?
And it was the only game they won that whole season. No kidding. It was kind of
awesome.
amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a great experience. And that opened my eyes to licensing music for commercials and television shows and movies and stuff like that. And actually, because of that, I started doing that. And this is a segue to what I did after the presidents. I did that for a good 10 or 15 years after the presidents, writing custom songs, scoring video games. I had a huge 800-piece library of just incidental music that I licensed to whoever wanted it through Getty Images and Getty Music. Anyway, so yeah, I did that for a long time just because of that Drew Carey thing. So thanks, Drew.
Yeah, thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Drew.
Keep doing it. I think that's great.
Yeah, we still get little checks from syndication.
And all the other things that you've done, I'm sure, maybe?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite activities is opening checks.
You're a waiter. You wait by the mailbox for checks to show up.
Exactly.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Now, I didn't know how good I had it till I met some other whiskeys from the city. It turns out a small town and an even smaller batch made me the most headstrong spirit both sides of the Pecos. Call me Critical Batch Texas Bourbon. Raised by a sailor in Bulverde, Texas, bottled at 110 proof, they took me out of the barrel and didn't know which end to slap. So why don't you come taste the pure definition of bourbon, grain to barrel to bottle, and join our little rebellion. You may all go to the liquor store. I'll be at Chaplin Distillery, 30790 Blanco Road in Bulverde, Texas. Ask for CB in the tasting room, and I'll see you soon. That was the Bourbon Talking, Streetwalkers. Chaplin Distillery is proudly veteran-owned and operated. Follow them on Instagram and Facebook, or go to chaplindistillery.com. And maybe I'll see you at the tasting room.
Let's get back into it.
All right. What is a Caspar Babypants?
So when I was with Mark playing that guitar as a 2-string, we had a live band called Supergroup. Mark played a 3-string and I played a 2-string, and we had a rotating set of drummers, and we improvised all the songs live. People could write down on a napkin what they wanted us to make a song out of, and we had to do it. So it was super fun and weird and improvisational and experimental. And my stage name at that point was Caspar Babypants, because I'd gone by the name Caspar, making these weird little cassettes throughout the years. And actually, Beck and I did a split 7-inch single called Caspar and Mollusk. He was Mollusk, I was Caspar, which is very rare and weird and hard to find. So one winter, I didn't have a hat. It was cold. I went to this food co-op. They had a bin of free clothing for the needy. I reached in and picked out this pair of hand-knitted baby's pants and put them on my head, and they were like thick and fuzzy, perfect hat. So the kids in my neighborhood started calling me Baby Pants. They're like, "Where you going, Baby Pants?" And so I put Caspar and Baby Pants together and became Caspar Babypants for this band that Mark and I had. And years later, when I finally landed on making music for 0 to 5-year-olds and their parents, I sat there for a minute thinking, well, what do I want to call it? Do I want to make up a band? Do I want to call it just my name? And all of a sudden I remembered I'm already Caspar Babypants, so I'll just use that. So it was sort of like a breadcrumb to myself.
Why did you decide that you needed to make music for 0 to 5-year-olds?
You know, it's funny. I didn't decide. The entire time I was in the Presidents and rock bands and stuff, I had this nagging feeling that there was some other approach that I should be exploring. And it was no more clear than that. It was just an impulse. There's something else. There's something else. There's something else. On the side, as the Presidents did their thing, I formed other bands, the Giraffes, the Tycoons, the Feelings Hijackers, all these bands that were completely different vibes, trying to find this other thing. And none of it was right. This went on for like 12 years of like hunting and pecking outside the band, trying to figure out what this voice in my gut was trying to say. Eventually, I started making music that was kind of acoustic and quiet, and still didn't know what to sing necessarily or who it was for. And then I met my second wife, Kate, and her artwork just completely spoke to me. And I realized I wanted to make music that came from the same planet as her artwork, which was the artwork. I don't have one here actually, but it was the artwork for the Caspar Babypants records. It's really well done. It's bright. It's funny. It's well crafted. It's got animals. It's, silly. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. So I made some songs inspired by her art. And then when I listened back, I was just struck with the solution. It's music for 0 to 5-year-olds because they are psychedelic individuals, and I want to give them psychedelic musical experiences like the Beatles gave me when I was a toddler. So that's how I landed on it. I didn't really decide. I just solved it. I solved for Caspar Babypants.
Oh, there you go. I like the way you put that. That inspiration that you got from your wife's art reminds me. Have you heard of an actor named Lou Diamond Phillips?
Sure. He played Richie Valens in the movie La Bamba.
He did. And a bunch of other things. His wife, Yvonne, she did drawings and whatever, and maybe even paintings, but she did art, kind of like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And he was inspired by her art, and he writes books based on that art.
Wow.
I think it's called like the Tinderbox series or something like that. So That's what it reminded me of when I heard you tell that story. And I think that's really cool to be inspired by, I mean, anybody, but particularly your wife's art, to then build on that art and make your own art.
Yeah.
As a result, I think that's super dope.
Yeah. Then the whole project really revealed another purpose, which was to reduce stress for families in stressful situations.
How?
Because I took the parents' aesthetics very seriously also. In fact, my joke was I didn't make kids music. I made parents music, but there's no genre called parents music. I was trying to really, really make songs that a toddler and a parent could genuinely enjoy together. So I was using like my history as a grown-up musician to sprinkle enough harmonic complexity or rhythmic complexity or lyrical complexity into these very simple songs so that an older sibling or a parent would be entertained as well. And all the feedback I got is that it worked, and I did it. And I made 19 records of that stuff. So
that is a lot of records.
Yeah. I was on a volcano. After all that waiting and then wondering, I had actually left myself a ton of breadcrumbs with songs that I'd written that I didn't know what they were for at the time. It turned out they were Caspar songs. So, but yeah, it became a piece of the puzzle for families to really genuinely like reduce stress. I used to imagine when I made the songs and I was listening, like, is this done? I would put myself in a car in August at Yosemite National Park with a family of 5, and they're all hot and hungry and tired, and they all have to pee and they're all mad. Will this song help? Or will it hurt? And I inevitably ended up taking the mandolin out. The mandolin, the tambourine, the banjo, they are all like really fun to play and put on their songs. But when I put myself in that car, I was like, that mandolin's like a buzzsaw. It's not going to help. It became kind of altruistic, I guess, or a way to participate in helping families feel good, which is more valuable than look at me, I'm a clever songwriter. So I kind of got to transcend my ego a bit for that project. It was nice.
That's an interesting approach. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody quite attack the problem from that direction.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How do you see the world? Like trees and objects have secret lives and shit like that. How do you see the world?
It's an alive place. Really, when I look outside and I see a plant or a tree or a bird, I think of it as the same as me, really. You know, there's a perception you can sort of foster where there is no up and down or in and out. We're living in a brick of matter. Air has molecules in it, just like my body does. In fact, my body has more space between the molecules than molecules. But we think of it as like, because we're tethered to this sphere gravitationally, that there's an up and a down and a in and an out, but there really isn't. We're really just in a brick of matter, and we're a different density of matter than a guitar or a tree. So I guess I feel empathetic. I always look at the world and I look at anything. I'm looking now like at clouds. I'm like, oh, look at that little cloud. You know, and I can imagine it's somehow I want to project an interior consciousness onto inanimate objects. I don't know why. It makes me laugh. I think it's funny. You know, I did write a song for Caspar called Mr. Cloud about a cloud. Yeah, I just see the world as alive.
When I was a little kid, I have this very strong recollection. I sat down, I was looking at, my clothes, I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm open my closet and I'm like, oh, I've got all these shirts or whatever. And then I started counting out the days like of the week. And I'm like, well, I have more shirts than I have days of the week. So that means that some of these shirts are not going to get worn every week. And that made me sad because those shirts were going to feel left out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, man, exactly. I worked at an amusement park and I used to feel sad for the rides.
Really? Because some lines were longer than others?
No, because they're just stuck there, just moving people around all day. And they can't go take a break or go to a movie, or they're just like, yeah, they're stuck.
I heard you say once, and this is a quote, life is not something to be won. It's something to be won with.
Oh, I said that?
You said that. You were so proud of yourself when you said it too. When you said it, you were like, holy shit, did I just come up with that? That's pretty awesome.
Life isn't something to be won. It's something to be won with. That sounds like a lyric from the music I'm working on now. Boy, yeah. Well, I think the core of that idea is attachment. I remember as a little kid feeling the thrill of Christmas Day and opening a present, and then immediately being struck by an emptiness. Well, almost like a message from somewhere else saying, you can't depend on acquisition of things for happiness. I don't know. It was an involuntary sort of follow-up emotion to the thrill of getting something for Christmas that was hollow and dark and like a void. So from a really early age, I had this idea, this thing like, well, there must be some other way to relate to the world that isn't about acquiring or winning. You know, I grew up in a Catholic environment. I was an altar boy and I did that whole thing. It was very intense. It was Roman Catholic Mass. My mom was into this kind of faction that was sort of shunned, I guess, by the Vatican or something. And we had to say do Mass in like, Ramada Inn meeting rooms and weird places because we didn't have a church. And eventually they got a church. And it was supposed to be the Mass that was said when Jesus was freshly crucified. And it was a brand new hit for him. So anyway, I guess I kind of eventually figured out or realized that the mythology around Catholicism didn't answer the question and things didn't answer the question. I think music answered the question more for me than anything else. It made me feel more like connected to other people and connected to something that I couldn't articulate, something vast and timeless and cosmic. I guess my whole life has been just like looking for ways to relate to the world that don't depend on the thrill of attachment. And actually, since the band broke up and I've been doing this new music and artwork, I've really cultivated a sense of like just doing it for the day. I'm working on a song all day because it makes the day interesting and fun and challenging, and it makes time evaporate. It turned into what I think a dog's experience is, where there's no time. It's just a series of moments that are either pleasurable or not pleasurable, and you just go from one to the next. So music does that mostly for me. And then, when the band became a big deal, the Presidents, that was another time that feeling reared its head, like, you've just been nominated for a Grammy. Oh my God. So what? It was just like this very short little hit. And I could tell that if I were to continue on the trajectory or try to continue to have hits and have a career in the sense of like a legacy kind of thing where you just continue to chart and chart and chart, I could tell that would be like chasing a phantom, it'd be like trying to dance with a ghost. There's just no way I'd ever feel relaxed. Now, some people can, some people are the Rolling Stones and they just keep going and going and going. And although I don't think they've had a hit in a long time, but they keep trying. Anyway, I think that's the long version of that answer is just, I've been very wary of attachment and the thrill that it brings and how quickly it evaporates.
Gotcha. I just want to give credit where credit is due. You said it 5 years ago on a podcast called Strangers and Friends.
Nice.
And it was, life is not something to be won. It is something to be won with. And I thought that was so profound that I just had to bring it up. I love it.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to jot that down as an idea for a song.
Do it. Well, it's your idea.
That's
so.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Knock yourself out.
Right.
Also, I only want to mention this out of its bizarreness. You were a guest on a podcast, and it's literally the most bizarre podcast I've ever heard in my entire life.
What's that?
It was called 25 Minutes of Silence.
Right.
And this was a podcast. The episode is about 28 minutes long, and there's an intro, which is, hey guys, this is Chris Ballew from the President of the United States, and we're going to sit in silence with him today. And you said, hi, it's me, blah, blah, blah. I'm ready for this. I've been looking forward to it all day or whatever. And then the people listening are going to think that I'm pulling their leg, but this is a real thing. For 25 minutes, you guys didn't say a word. The host was reading a book, and do you remember what you were doing?
I don't actually. What?
You were packaging CDs for a charity event.
Oh, right.
And so you hear the noise of you packaging CDs. You hear him turn a page every now and then. Every now and then somebody clears their throat. And then at the very end, 25 minutes later, he says, thank you so much for sitting with me, Chris. Do you have anything to plug? And then you plugged a few things, and then that was it. And I was like, what the fuck is this? But that was a real thing. And so I just want everybody to know that was a thing that was out there. And there's about 50 or 60 episodes of that with different guests. And just, wow, that was a real thing.
I've completely forgotten about that. So thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. You're part of a very odd time in podcasting. That was, I've never heard of anything like it. And it kind of blew me away when I found it.
It's incredible how much there is to forget. That's what I've been learning about my own life. Like you'll remind me of something like that. Like, God, I did that too. The list of like weird places I've been, people I've met, things I've done. I need to really make an actual list because every so often a new one pops into my head. I'm like,
well, you need to write that book.
yeah.
Speaking of which, you got some great advice from Madonna one time. What was it? And did it help?
The advice was don't expect critical acclaim for your craft because you are funny. If you're making music that is perceived as positive or light or uplifting or silly in some way, that the work that goes into making that music is just as much work as that goes into making something heavy or intense. But critically, you'll never hear a peep from writers or whatever, music writers, acknowledging that there's a craft to music that is happy. And she was right. And she saved me a lot of stress, I guess. You know, there is also that attachment to critical acclaim that can also screw you up. So it's not just being attached to things. You can be attached to the rush of like a good review.
Well, in her saying that because your music is funny, it won't get critical acclaim, as evidenced by the fact that there is not Academy Award category for comedy films.
Right. There you go. Wow. I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Now that you think about it, I'm right. Tell me about Kurt Cobain's Ghost.
Oh, man. Kurt Cobain. I don't know. This is a funny. Okay, here we go. I got a call from the president's manager saying that he had a call from a place called the Museum of the Mysteries. And the Museum of the Mysteries had a seance the night before. They claimed to have been contacted by the ghost of Kurt Cobain, who sent lyrics down from somewhere with the instruction that he wanted Chris Ballew to sing this song. And then he had a little code. It said, ask Dave Grohl about the odd-shaped Mexican beer bottles in the avocado green kitchen. That was some sort of key. Like if I doubted that it was true, I could ask Dave Grohl to verify through that little image. So I got the lyrics and they were not exactly rhyming or anything. They were just kind of like blobs of lyrics. And I called Chris Novoselic to ask him. I don't have Dave Grohl's phone number. He's too big of a rock star, but I can call Chris Novoselic.
I'll give it to you offline. Go ahead.
Okay. It's 555-555-5555. So I called Chris and went over the whole thing with him. And, you know, he gave me his opinion, which was, I don't know. His opinion was basically like, I'm not going to say things like this aren't real, but I'm not going to say it's real. You know, his big advice was just don't do anything that sort of puts you at the center of the Nirvana thing, because there's a lot of darkness in that zone. And so I got off phone with him and I was like, I don't know what to do. Well, you know, I realized he said, sing the song. And initially I was thinking, like, I'll record it and release it. It'll be a thing. But I eventually realized, no, his instructions are to sing it. So I set it to music. I went out in the backyard and I sang it, figuring if it is from the ethereal version of Kurt Cobain, he'll probably hear it. So I did that and figured, all right, I'm done. And then 6 or 7 months later, I was walking in the wintertime and I was looking at the, you know, like muddy leaves and stuff. And I was imagining bugs kind of curled up in muddy leaves, going to sleep like a lullaby. And I wrote a song called Even Bugs Are Sleeping in my head. And when I got home, I set it to the music that I used for the Ghost of Kurt Cobain's lyrics, and it clicked. And so the Caspar Babypants song, Even Bugs Are Sleeping, is secretly a collaboration between me and the ghost of Kurt Cobain. And that's the story.
Whoa.
And scene.
Wow. I'm so glad you told that story. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, if it was real, I got to sort of use an element from the quote unquote collaboration in a song that, but, you know, so I wrote the music and the melody and the lyrics to Even Bugs Are Sleeping. The other one, the one he supposedly wrote, I'll never release or anything. It's just private.
But you still have it, right?
Yeah, I still have it. I recorded it, but I'm not going to do anything.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That is so cool. And that's Even Bugs Are Sleeping?
Even Bugs Are Sleeping. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's dope.
Yeah, I dig it.
Well, can I play that one? You could say no.
Yeah, you can play it.
Is that cool?
No, yeah, sure.
I mean, it's such a great story. I would love to play it.
Totally. I love that. And I'm very proud of that recording. It's one of my favorites. Even bugs are sleeping.
bugs get in their shells. Ants find a hole to sleep as well. Spiders stop spinning webs. Centipedes make up long beds. And even bugs are sleeping under leaves, dozing low. Even bugs are sleeping under leaves, dozing low. Butterflies fold up tight. Fireflies turn off their lights. That grasshopper's got to go. Tuck in his friend mosquito. And even bugs are sleeping under leaves, dozing low. Even bugs are sleeping under leaves, dozing low. Water bugs move to the shore. Crawlers don't crawl round no more. Ladybugs fold up their wings. Antennas droop and don't feel things. Even bugs are sleeping under leaves, dozing low. Even bugs are sleeping under leaves, dozing low, 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 bugs are sleeping low, low. Even bugs are sleeping low. Even bugs are sleeping.
Love it.
Yeah, it's great.
What is your relationship with Sir Mix-a-Lot? What? Do you know everybody? Is that how this works?
I know, it's so weird. We had a band together. It was Mix and the Presidents. Initially, we were going to cover a Jimi Hendrix song for some sort of compilation album. We got together for dinner and we all hit it off so well. I think quickly the idea shifted to let's make our own songs. And so we did a studio session, did 2 songs, and we loved how they came out. So we just kept working and working. And eventually we did a West Coast tour, and that was very hilarious, fun.
What was the name of the band that you toured under?
Subset. We just never finished the record. The whole project kind of collapsed under the weight of its own expectations. You know, we got caught up in that attachment thing to like success. And, you know, it was interesting too, trying to find a subset where we all felt like the song was good. You know, like Mix had his sort of aesthetic. I had mine. Dave and Jason had their own, and finding that little patch. The little patch got smaller and smaller until it really didn't exist anymore. And that's when we kind of went separate ways. So, and that all happened while the Presidents were broken up, you know, between 98 and 2003. We made a record and we had a band with Sir Mix-a-Lot. So we weren't sitting around. We just weren't the Presidents. We were just guys making music.
I love that everybody's like, whatever happened to the Presidents? And then you guys didn't stop. I mean, you've put out, I don't know, 30 albums since then or something crazy like that.
Something crazy. Yeah.
That's so cool.
We were a band from 94 to 98. And then we had a 5-year break during which we did this other stuff. And then from 2003 to 2015, we were a band. So we had 2 acts.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell me about this new music you're working on, this ethereal, meditative.
There's the meditation music, which is like 10 to 20 minute long, just cloudy things. And then there's this other music I'm doing, which is way more kind of rooted in psychedelia, fuzz boxes, lyrics very much inspired by like that saying I said, where life is not something to be won, something to be won with. It's kind of that, attitude in the lyrics. Enlightenment, what it means to be human, to have a brain, to have an ego that you have to negotiate with, to feel love for all humans, not just for the ones you happen to interact with. All these kind of ideas about connectivity and emotions and humanness. And I'm trying to take all that stuff and not make it preachy or instructional. I'm trying to make it more abstract, kind of impressionistic, play with words in a way I've never played with them before, like the way Beck did, really, like, using words to kind of abstractly paint pictures rather than like Caspar Babypants, where I was telling a very clear narrative, or even a lot of the President's songs. Actually, that's one thing I love about the song Lump. It is lyrically like what I'm doing now because it's an abstraction, although it really is describing a woman in a house coat. I mean, it is what it says it is. But yeah, it's really fun. I've got to obviously get my elevator pitch condensed because I haven't quite figured out a way to talk about this stuff that's like a sexy 4-word, this is what it is thing. I'm still working on that. My 3rd record of this new stuff is coming out a week from today, actually.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and you can go to chrisballew.org to have it all for free. There's meditation music for free there. There's drawings to look at. There's a whole bunch of archive stuff, like my little Caspar cassettes, the Dukes of Pop, which is a proto-President's band. Gosh, all kinds of stuff is up there for free to download. So,
and that's at chrisballew.org.
.org, BALLEW.org. Yeah. But I'm really excited about this new music. It's another eruption of a volcano of stuff. It's funny, about a year and a half before this music started happening for me, I had a feeling, I had this like abstract vibe, like I'm going to be making some new music and it's psychedelic and it's for grownups and it's free form lyrically and it's weird. And I remember telling a couple of friends, like, I feel something's coming. And then it went away and I couldn't find it. And then about a year and a half later, it just like came into focus. And I'm looking right now on my computer. I've got 3 albums done, a 3rd one coming out, and 80 songs in pretty much finished states ready for subsequent records. So I'm going to be doing 2 of these a year, July and January, for the foreseeable future. So settle in, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very prolific.
Yeah. It's just what I do with my day. It just makes my day. I kind of equate what I'm doing now to I'm a hobbyist. I'm a guy who works at a regular job, and on the weekends, I make chairs in my garage, and I'm just making chairs. You know what I mean? I'm just like...
That's funny. I was going to say you're like that guy who comes home from work and goes to his shop and whittles.
Exactly. You're
whittling.
I'm musically whittling, putting it out, and really not attached to any outcome. Just, it's what makes my day feel good.
That's really sweet.
I'm also retired from performing. So I'm kind of doing a experiment in sort of quieting that part of me that used to be kind of hooked into that.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, you never know. I love the phrase never say never because
love it.
If when the presidents broke up the first time, you told me we'd get together again for another 13 years, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Love it. Does your flea still have dogs?
Yes, absolutely.
Gotcha.
In a metaphorical sense, totally.
Of course. Totally. Okay, well, we're going to wind up here. I have taken up so much of your time, and I appreciate how generous you have been with it. Chris, where can people find you on social media?
The best place, I guess, is Instagram, just at Chris Ballew. That's a real good one because I put all sorts of stuff that's happening up there. I'm not very good with Facebook. I have it, but I don't really look at it. I'll look at it twice a year, so don't expect anything snappy out of that. And then my website, of course, chrisballew.org, and there's babypantsmusic.com for Caspar Babypants. So really, it's Instagram and websites.
Did you say babypantsmusic.com?
Yes.
And that's where we can go to buy Caspar Babypants music.
Not necessarily to buy. I don't sell it through there, but you can go there to kind of check out what's going on. You can get it in Spotify. You can get it in all the...
Okay.
But yeah, that's just where I've actually put up during the pandemic when I couldn't do shows. I did single serving live videos from my studio of all my songs. So there's like 55 live performances up there that parents can use to kind of check out so that they can see what it was like when I did play live.
Oh, that's cool. That's a great idea.
It's like I archived all the performances so that, you can check it out.
Dope.
Yeah.
Chris, is there anything that I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about today? Specifically, did I miss anything?
No, I think we've covered it all. Pretty darn comprehensive, I'm going to say. Yeah. I mean, there's always other stories. There's, stories about Weird Al and Little Richard and the Captain from Captain and Tennille. And there's lots of stories, but we'll have to do a volume 2.
Yeah. I'll have to ask you again in a while. Chris, you have been so generous with your time. I really, really appreciate it. I can't believe I got to speak with you. I'm patting myself on the back metaphorically because I didn't nerd out and just act like a little fanboy. Thank you so much. You obviously, much like my entire generation, your music is part of the soundtrack of my life and my influential periods, shall we say. So thank you for all of that you have done and all that you continue to do. And most importantly, thank you for sitting down with me today and letting us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I appreciate your patience.
Oh, by the way, I'm supposed to tell you that Chuck Shute from the Chuck Shute podcast said to tell you hello.
Oh, okay. Awesome. That's nice. Cool.
Thank you, Chris. Now go and enjoy the rest of your day, dude. I appreciate it.
All right.
Rock on.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Take care.
All right. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jax Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend, subscribe, and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.